So what I want to do really, if I may, is to talk about what the future problems might be. And the timescale is the next 30 years. It's not the immediate future. There will be a resonance of what's happening in the Middle East, but I want to look much longer term. So it is necessarily speculative, and I admit that. And you may have lots of disagreements with the things that I've tried to pick out, which I think are the really significant trends. Nevertheless, I think it is worth giving a go. If we look to the future over the next 30 years, what I'd like to suggest is there are three overall drivers worldwide, things which are happening, trends, which are likely to dictate the kinds of security issues we may have, are the chances of peace and the risks of war. The first of these is, very bluntly, worldwide, the widening socioeconomic gap, the widening wealth-poverty gap. The second trend links in very much, and in fact in some ways it's represented in the banner at the front, and that is we are, for the first time in human history, finally facing up to the environmental limitations dictated by the entire planetary system, the biosphere or the global ecosystem, call it what you will. We've had major problems of pollution and dereliction and the rest at national and regional levels. It is only really in the last half century, and in many ways in the last 30 years, that we've begun to realize this is now a global phenomenon. So we have these factors, but the key thing to all of this is that what it does as climate change takes root is that it undermines the ecological carrying capacity of huge areas of croplands to produce food at the level they do at present. And this is at a time when the population is still growing worldwide. And essentially, that will be the downside if we do not get climate change under control. And essentially, that would mean all kinds of issues, which I'll come on to very shortly. Then we come to the third factor. And this, if you like, is the way that security is seen. Essentially, you would call it the paradigm of the control paradigm. When push comes to shove, the more powerful, more well-off, more comfortable parts of the world will, if they see themselves threatened, use force to prevent that threat. Now, in a sense, you're almost getting very pessimistic. You're saying, well, you know, we're going to have huge disasters with huge numbers of people killed before people take notice. And this, in a sense, I think, is the kind of race that we're facing. Are we ready earlier to start making the really big changes? Or do we have to wait until there are such disasters that we're forced into action? Whether it's the former or the latter depends hugely on the amount of work to show the positive things that can be done in the short term, to demonstrate what can be done and what can be done pretty easily. The fact that some forms of renewable power are now right down to grid parity with electricity produced by burning coal, getting very close to it in many parts of the world. So even economically, it is starting to make much more sense, quite apart from the utter environmental lead. But let me finish off by coming back to the overall theme. We're talking about security and future wars. In a nutshell, I think what one has to recognize is the tendency to control new threats by means of, if need be, maintaining the status quo. The term I use for this is lidism. You keep the lid on things rather than going underneath for the actual underlying causes. And the thing is, it is not actually workable in the kind of world that we're facing. We have huge opportunities, but the risk is we see things in the old way. We're now into the 15th year of the war on terror, and the news this week is of an expansion of Taliban and indeed ISIS activity in Afghanistan, that ISIS has made further gains in Syria, that it has now decided to develop the capability to bring down airliners abroad, that it is taking root in other parts of the world. And this is nearly 15 years after we thought the way to handle it was by military means. And you talk seriously to recently retired military who are very open about the extent of the failure and the fact that it is not recognized and not understood and not appreciated more generally. People on the inside know how bad it's been, but essentially there's almost a kind of omerta, a war of silence about how badly it's gone wrong. And that, though, is an indication that lidism, controlling things, not going underneath, is simply not working. And we've really got to rethink things out. I think if there's one lesson to come out of the experience in the terrible events of 9/11, It is the way that we chose to respond has not worked, and that's a very strong indicator that if we're really going to face the problems of a divided and constrained world, if we think we can maintain the status quo for maybe a fifth of the world's population, it will not work. So let me finish by looking at the other side, because the title of this talk, very ambitiously, I'm afraid, far too ambitiously, was Future Wars and How to Prevent Them. I suppose, in short, it's easy. What you have to do is move to a much more equitable global economic system, and one which is progressively, within 20 years, ultra low carbon. And I really do appreciate people's willingness to come and to discuss what is a key issue of our age. Thank you very much.